The alien woman stood in the observation deck of the human vessel looking out at the stars with eyes that held centuries of loneliness. And her name was Zara. And she belonged to a species called the Kethrin, who had conquered half the galaxy through cold calculated efficiency and brutal discipline. Her people did not understand love or warmth or gentleness, and they were raised in isolation chambers where emotional connections were considered weakness and liability, and any Kethrin who showed affection was terminated immediately without hesitation, and this was the way of her civilization for 3,000 years. She had been captured during a skirmish near the outer colonies, and the humans had taken her aboard their ship called the Wanderer, and instead of executing her or torturing her for information, they had given her a small quarters with a bed and books and even plants, and she did not understand why. The human who visited her most often was a young woman named Lily Carter, who brought her meals 3 times a day and always smiled when she entered, and Zara found this behavior confusing and suspicious, because in her world kindness was always a prelude to betrayal. Lily had brown hair that fell in waves around her shoulders, and green eyes that seemed to hold genuine concern, and she would sit across from Zara during meals and talk about her life back on Earth and her family, and her dreams of exploring distant worlds, and Zara would listen in silence, analyzing every word for hidden threats. One evening, Lily brought a tray with hot soup and fresh bread, and she noticed Zara shivering slightly in the cool air of the quarters, and without asking she left and returned with a thick blanket and draped it over Zara's shoulders, and the gesture made Zara freeze because no one had ever done something like that for her before. "Your warmth, it hurts," she said, "because no one's ever shown me love before." Lily paused and looked at her with those impossibly kind eyes and asked, "What do you mean?" And Zara explained how her people were raised and how touch was forbidden except in combat, and how emotions were surgically suppressed in most citizens, and how she had lived 43 years without ever feeling a gentle hand or hearing a kind word. Lily sat down beside her and slowly, carefully reached out and took Zara's hand. And Zara flinched but did not pull away, and Lily's hand was warm and soft, and it sent strange sensations through Zara's body that she had no words for, and tears began to fall from Zara's eyes, and she did not understand why. Over the following weeks, Lily continued to visit, and she taught Zara about human customs and human emotions, and she explained concepts like friendship and compassion and loyalty that went beyond strategic alliances, and Zara absorbed everything, like a desert absorbing rain. The ship captain was a stern woman named Grace Monroe, who initially did not trust Zara and kept armed guards near her quarters at all times. But Grace noticed how Zara began to change, and how the cold, calculated expression in her eyes began to soften, and how she started asking questions about human culture, instead of remaining silent. One day, the Wanderer encountered a Kethrin battle. Cruiser and Zara's people demanded her return and threatened to destroy the human ship if they refused, and Grace called Zara to the bridge and asked her what she wanted to do, and Zara was shocked because no one had ever asked her what she wanted, looked at Lily, who stood nearby with worry in her eyes, and then at Grace, who waited patiently for her answer. And Zara realized that these humans had given her something her own people never had, and that was choice and freedom, and the possibility of a different life. She told Grace that she wanted to stay, and Grace nodded and told the Kethrin that Zara had requested asylum, and the Kethrin commander responded with confusion because their language did not even have a word for asylum, and they could not comprehend why anyone would choose to leave their own people. The Kethrin opened fire, and the Wanderer barely escaped through a debris field. And during the chase, Lily and Zara huddled together in the lower decks, and Lily held Zara's hand and told her everything would be okay. And Zara believed her because Lily had never lied to her. After they escaped, Grace officially granted Zara refugee status and assigned her quarters in the civilian section of the ship, and Lily helped her decorate the space with colorful fabrics and pictures and small trinkets from different worlds. And Zara stared at everything in wonder, because her old chambers had been white and empty and sterile. Another crew member named Sophie Brooks, who worked in engineering, began teaching Zara how to repair ship systems, and Zara discovered she enjoyed working with her hands and creating instead of destroying. And Sophie was patient and encouraging and never got angry when Zara made mistakes. There was also a medical officer named Kate Simmons who examined Zara regularly and monitored her health. And Kate was gentle and explained everything before she did it, and always asked permission before touching Zara, and this concept of consent was completely foreign to Zara. But she grew to appreciate it deeply. Months passed and Zara learned to smile and laugh and even hug, though the physical contact still felt overwhelming at times, and she began to understand that love was not weakness but rather the strongest force in the universe, and that her people had been wrong about everything. One night Lily found Zara crying in her quarters and asked what was wrong, and Zara explained that she was mourning the life she could have had if she had been born human, and Lily sat beside her and said that Zara could not change her past, but she could choose her future, and that the crew had already accepted her as one of them. The turning point came when the Wanderer responded to a distress signal from a Kethran colony that had been attacked by raiders, and Grace asked Zara if she wanted to help. And Zara said yes without hesitation, and when they arrived, Zara used her knowledge of Kethran systems to help evacuate civilians before the colony collapsed. Among the evacuees was a young Kethran child who was alone and terrified, and Zara knelt down and did something no adult Kethran had ever done, and she embraced the child and whispered that everything would be okay, and the child clung to her and cried. And Zara realized she was breaking every rule of her culture, and she did not care. Lily watched from nearby with tears in her eyes, and later she told Zara how proud she was, and Zara asked why, and Lily said, "Because you chose to be better than what you were taught to be. And that takes more courage than anything." The child, whose name was Nira, stayed on the Wanderer because she had no family, and Zara took responsibility for her and began teaching her about both Kethran and human ways, and showing her that there was another path. Besides the cold emptiness of their traditional culture, Grace noticed how Zara had become a bridge between two species, and she offered Zara an official position as cultural liaison and translator, and Zara accepted and found purpose in helping others understand each other and preventing conflicts through communication instead of violence. One evening, Zara and Lily sat in the observation deck watching a nebula paint the darkness with colors, and Lily asked if Zara ever regretted her choice, and Zara thought for a long moment, and then said that she regretted all the years she had wasted not knowing what love felt like. But she did not regret anything since meeting Lily. Lily smiled and took Zara's hand, and said that she was grateful the universe had brought them together, and Zara squeezed her hand gently, and realized that this simple gesture of affection that would have meant nothing to someone raised with love meant everything to someone who had lived without it. The Wanderer continued its journey through the stars, and Zara's story spread through both human and Kethran channels, and other Kethrans began to defect, seeking the same freedom and warmth that Zara had found, and slowly, impossibly, a movement began to form. Zara knew it would take generations to change her people's culture, but she also knew that every revolution started with a single person choosing differently, and she had made that choice. And now she would spend the rest of her life helping others make it too. And every day when Lily smiled at her, or Sophie joked with her, or Kate checked on her health, or Grace asked her opinion, or Nira hugged her good night, Zara felt that strange, wonderful pain in her chest, and she understood now that it was not really pain at all, but rather the feeling of a frozen heart finally beginning to thaw. She had spent 43 years believing she was incapable of love, and in just 1 year among humans, she had discovered that she had an infinite capacity for it, and that capacity grew stronger every day, and she knew that she would never be alone again, and that knowledge filled her with a joy she could not have imagined in her previous life. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and Zara looked at them, not with the cold strategic assessment of a Kethran warrior, but with the wonder and hope of someone who had been given a second chance, and she silently thanked whatever cosmic force had brought her to this ship and these people who had shown her what it meant to truly live.